Hey.
So far away, but
Yeah.
we'll see how it is.
Because you were way on the other.
Baltimore City Council Ways and Means Committee, we are here for day 3 of City Council Bill 22-0235, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District, Chair of the committee. I'm joined to my left by Councilman Mark Conway, 4th District, and Councilwoman Odette Ramos, 14th District. On behalf of Mayor Brandon Scott is Nina Themlis. On behalf of Council President Nick Mosby is Matt Stegman and Nate Poole. To my immediate right is Marguerite Curran. We are here for our first hearing of the day, which is the Board of Liquor License Commissioners for Baltimore City. We have the Executive Secretary of the Board, Doug Page. Mr. Page, if you could please introduce your staff. For those of you that are speaking, feel free to take off your mask when you are speaking, and please be sure to speak clearly into the mic with your face, 3 to 5 inches away from the mic. Mr. Page, what I'm going to ask you to do is introduce your staff, do your presentation. Please keep it under 5 minutes, and then we'll jump right to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Douglas Page, Executive Secretary of the Baltimore City Liquor Board. Our agency consists of 19 employees, 4 commissioners, 3 permanent, and 1 alternate, and an appeals council. The Liquor Board is charged with the responsibility of enforcing and regulating all establishments in Baltimore City that have been licensed by this agency. That includes adult entertainment. With me today is my Deputy Executive Secretary, Mr. Nick Blendy, Masai Benet, the accountant. I'd just like to say on behalf of my Board of Commissioners, we'd like to thank you for allowing us to take this opportunity to give you an overview of what we do and where we are. At this time, Mr. Blendy.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Ways and Means Committee. Nicholas Blendy, for the record, Deputy Executive Secretary of the Liquor Board for Baltimore City. Very briefly, before I jump into the PowerPoint, as Mr. Page indicated, we are the regulatory body for retail alcohol licenses and adult entertainment in the city of Baltimore. There are 25 local licensing boards dealing with alcohol across the state. The 23 counties each have one. The city of Annapolis has one, and the city of Baltimore has one. We answer to 3 commissioners and 1 alternate commissioner who are our bosses. And we are, of course, happy to work with this committee and this administration as part of the budget process and the ordinance estimates. We have some core functions that our office does. As a brief overview, we have the executive team consisting of myself and Mr. Page. We have our administrative division, which processes most of the licenses, or all of the licenses, rather, including the annual licenses as well as the one-days that many of you are familiar with in your districts that are often the festivals that are held throughout the year. And then we have our inspection division, which is headed by our Chief Inspector, John Chrysamalis, and that consists of 9 inspectors that we're excited to, I think we mentioned this last year, but we are officially on the same district map for our liquor license inspectors as the police districts are. So that is an idea that our chief inspector came up with that our board agreed was an excellent one, and that helps facilitate better communication between the various police districts and the NCOs and the command staff there and our inspectors, so they're all on the same page as far as the liquor stores and alcoholic beverages establishments go. Lastly, we have our community outreach liaison, Mr. Ockhammer, who so many of you have seen at all of your community meetings in person and virtual. Mr. Ockhammer does a phenomenal job of keeping the liquor board appraised of all of the goings-on in the various neighborhoods throughout our great city. And he works with you directly often and definitely with your staff in resolving issues and facilitating conversations between licensed establishments and the neighborhoods, because they are, of course, important neighbors to all of the neighborhoods. So then jumping right in briefly, we have 2 functions as the way the city finance department has us set up. One is our liquor licensing, which is Service 850. And I can't go all the way down, but I don't know if you guys can see it. So anyway, Service 850, this holds most of our administrative division as well as the community outreach function. You can see what the service does. we process roughly about, historically it had been 1,241, I think, the year before the pandemic broke out. We're slightly over 1,100 liquor licenses left. We lost about 100 thereabouts due to the impacts of the pandemic. And what you can see, this function, we renew all liquor licenses by statute during the month of March 1st to March 31st is what the code calls for. And then it's late thereafter, but we still process them. This is also responsible for preparing the board hearings, the dockets, and making certain everything is in order for when our board meets and rules upon applications or deals with the formal charges and violations for violating our rules. This service also does all of the updating as every year the General Assembly, as you know, has control over alcoholic beverages. We're Title 12 of the Alcoholic Beverages article, and oftentimes they make changes to amendments to state law, and we operate in real time to implement the will of the General Assembly and the governor when these laws are changed. So that is roughly what Service 850 does, and I can jump into 851. Oh, there we go. Didn't realize it was a separate slide. So you can see the performance measures that we took, public hearings dealing with new licenses, transfers, and expansions. We downwardly derived that number due to not certain how many hearings we would have. We are pleased to report that we have a very busy month in front of us for new licenses and transfer applications because we received a large amount of applications in our May ad, 26. So that's hopefully a harbinger of business returning to something approaching normal as we come out of the pandemic, because the economics certainly negatively impacted by COVID in this particular field. Then lastly, our annual license is renewed. We, as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, we downwardly derived that to 1,100 as our target because we know we lost about 100 licenses during the pandemic. And then I can jump into 851, which is liquor license compliance. That is predominantly our inspection division. You are all very familiar with our chief inspector and our fantastic area inspectors. They are responsible for conducting routine inspections as well as compliance inspections. They participate in the social club task force and the underage task force. They're also all, our chief inspectors should be commended for offering, and our inspectors should all be commended for going forward with lots of additional training. Every one of our inspectors has been Narcan trained. Every one of our inspectors has gone through rudimentary CPR instruction and are CPR certified. Two of them, our chief inspector as well as one of the district inspectors, participated in a human trafficking training, a conference down in Ocean City, because oftentimes what we've learned is there's an overlap between the certain licensed establishments are on the watch list of the various agencies at the federal and state level that deal with human trafficking. So all of our inspectors, I think, should be commended. We are very proud of them for taking these affirmative steps to be as useful to the community and to our board as they can be, and they're always open and willing to say yes as long as we can, find the resources and still execute our core legislatively required functions. And then lastly, we mentioned at the last session, there is now a line item for the cloud-based service that we're transitioning to right now. All of our applications and inspections are done on paper and then have to be inputted into a system. We've been working with our vendor for over a year now. We're in the beta testing phase, and we are pleased to announce that it will absolutely go live during the fiscal year 23. And we'll be very excited to unveil that for the administration and for the council and our delegation at the General Assembly. Then lastly, the two outputs that I think are on the screen here, now that I know that to flip ahead. Number one, the violation compliance hearings. This agency was very proud to have answered the call during the pandemic. We were out and enforcing the various executive orders of the governor, the mayor, the health commissioner of Baltimore City to ensure compliance with the capacity restrictions as we all worked together to fight the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic and keep the residents of Baltimore very safe. And then I want to close on a personal privilege moment. We are very proud of our 311 responsiveness rate. I know that there's challenges in communicating effectively, often due to technological limitations of ancient programs, but the public should know, this council knows, because you see our response. We do get to every one of the 311 calls that get put in within 72 hours. And during the pandemic, when we had fewer inspections to do because so many licensees were closed in compliance with executive orders, we were at 100% within 24 hours. So we're proud of that benchmark, and we're going to keep meeting that benchmark. And so when we have an excellent working relationship with BSIT, and they're very accommodating to the unique nature of what we do as far as 311s. With that, I hope I didn't go over 5 minutes, and happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you. Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Nick. I've got one major question and maybe some small ones, but I'll just kind of start with the main one. That is, in fiscal year 22, the agency implemented a new cloud software contract which improves agency effectiveness and efficiency related to constituent services, inspection management, permitting, revenue collections, and application submission and review. Given this new software, has there been any thought put into making it more accessible for docket decisions rather than posting separate PDFs on the website? Or is that new software mainly internal? Does it has a public-facing?
That's an excellent question, Councilman. And the answer is, like, we are on 100% thinking along the same lines you are. That's part of what we are going through in the beta testing right now. My goal as the custodian of records for all the Public Information Act requests for this agency is to make 100% of everything that's a public record accessible on the website, because I don't like asking my staff to spend time going through and unfortunately, obviously, we have to comply with the law and be responsive on these things, and that takes person hours to go and redact certain things and go through paper files and make scans. So yes, to short answer your question, we hope that it's a tool that's useful to the public, to our inspectors, to the elected officials, to the reporters and the media. 100%, that's our end goal. And obviously, it won't be perfect when it first comes out, but we welcome anyone's feedback and thoughts, because it's an evolving situation, and it's pretty tremendous the things that they can implement in pretty short time with the vendor.
Excellent, that's good. And you were talking earlier about the strong relationship with BSIT and sorting that out, so I'm eager to see that play out.
They do an excellent job holding what we have together, which is, I think, BSIT bubblegum and paper clips, but they're super responsive, and they do keep the trains running, and we thank them for that.
Good. My other question is with regard to the decrease in the percentage of violation fines collected within time allotted by the board order. We know that was part due to the pandemic. Are we expecting that to change? Noticing that businesses are opening up and businesses changed dramatically since 2021.
Yes is the short answer, and just to give a little bit of explanation to that, the governor did a very unique thing with his executive order, basically suspended time for 475 days during the pandemic from March the 12th, 2020 through June the 30th, 2021. With the challenges of getting all the required licenses, it has been this agency's focus for the past few months, as we've opened up, to go and conduct full routine inspections of all of our establishments so that we are 100% confident of them having, the correct trader's license, the correct sales and use, all the required documents. But one of the things that we're running into and have consistently run into is places just keeping irregular hours during the pandemic. It does seem like we're resuming a consistency, and so we do anticipate that to not be as poor of a record as moving forward.
And And just to kind of piggyback on that, we also noticed we saw a decrease in the number of inspections per FTE, also tied, I believe, to the pandemic and our response to executive orders. Do we expect that also to improve?
Right, and so that wasn't, one, that was 100% related to the pandemic. Two, we want it important for the public to know and this committee to know that wasn't because our inspectors were, sitting on their hands and just, in the office. They weren't. They were out and they were conducting those compliance inspections, making sure the places were closed when they needed to be closed. And we just don't have an input in our system for that due to the technological challenges. So we know as an agency, there are significant amounts of work that are uncaptured by the metrics that we've put in place. And that's why Mr. Ockhammer, at the urgency of our board, is working on preparing a story of what the agency did during the pandemic, that once we present it to the board, obviously when they approve it, we'll submit it to the administration and all of our important, our partners in the council and the General Assembly.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. And that is very clear in the in the budget. And just as I asked that question, it was just a matter of understanding we were responding to the executive orders as in part to the pandemic. We know that things have begun to change, and just noting we will see that improve. And
Hopefully, that's our expectation.
hopefully,
and our plan.
barring any new
Yeah,
variants.
whatever Greek letter we would move into.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. We've been joined by Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District, member of the committee. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Blendy, you mentioned that we lost 100 licenses during the pandemic. That just means that people went out of business?
Yeah, so the alcoholic beverages article is pretty, it's pretty prescriptive in many ways, but one way it is 12-2202 requires a licensed establishment to be open at least some point well, I'll say it the other way, cannot be closed for business for 180 days. If it is, without taking certain actions, it expires. We know that the bulk of these were intended expirations, folks that just, this model doesn't work for my very expensive rent that I'm paying. A lot of these were in the downtown area, but new licenses can get issued to fill those places. The vast majority of them were Class B restaurant licenses, and I think the councilman and the chairman knows that many of them were in his district, and because the downtown corridor, the 46th legislative district, has a very expensive capital cost, and so a pandemic doesn't let you put seats in your place. So we know they went under.
Licenses expired, but you're allowed to create new Class Bs, right?
Yes, Class Bs, yes. There's a whole bunch of class of licenses that it's a closed market.
Right.
But, and we did lose some of those, so. But the vast majority were Class Bs, and they can be applied for, and the board can grant and issue new ones.
Gotcha. And then
Councilwoman, can you hang on for a second? I just want to recognize our
we
former
know who
colleague,
that is.
Councilman Ed Reisinger,
Commissioner Ed Reisinger.
from the 10th District.
Good morning.
Councilman, you want me to ask the young lady from BBMR to scoot over so you can take your old seat, or are you good? Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great to see you, Councilman. I think you answered, this is Councilman Burnett's question, how has COVID continued to impact liquor license and compliance? You answered that earlier in your remarks and in your answers to
Yes.
Councilman Conway, that you've done you did a lot of proactive inspections, but didn't have a way to measure it because we noticed that as well. So
right.
Okay.
And the councilman can take note that, as I said, we're out and we're making sure that all the licensed establishments have all of their compliant, you allowed your trader's license to expire. We're going to be back in 10 days. You better have your new trader's licenses, or we're going to violate you. So, but our licensees are getting back into the swing of things, as it seems like everything is. It's a very highly regulated, industry.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
We've been joined by Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer, 5th District. Councilman Stokes, you have anything?
Real quick. I just wanted to ask, I know it's budget season. I know y'all have a reduction in liquor license, so I didn't know if y'all, interested or talking about hiring some more liquor inspectors, and I know they gotta come through the state. Is that something y'all had on your plate?
So the councilman asked an excellent question. Lots of the license fees, so from a budgetary perspective, all of the license fees are not set by the council. They are set in state law. Class A is $858 a year. Class B is $1,320. BD7 is what it is. A D is, I think it's $858 as well. But those are all set by statute. We can say that this agency has consistently, since it's gotten put on the outcome-based budgeting and had council, scrutiny and approval, we have consistently brought in more revenues than we have cost the general fund. Even with the reduction in fees, we anticipate that in fiscal 23, we will continue to bring in more revenues. We are, like I mentioned at the outset, we're happy to participate in all of the task forces and all of the ancillary things that we work in coordination with our sister agencies across the city. But we are cognizant that we must execute our core function of being able to know what's going on in every liquor license establishment and every adult entertainment establishment in the city. We do a good job, yeah, I mean, we're happy to have continued conversations with the administration, the council, and our delegation about the amount of things that we're happy to work with, the costs in real and over time that that expansion of that might be. And certainly we're not foolish. We know that cannabis is a question for the voters on this ballot in November. We're watching with close scrutiny what's happening in Annapolis. It does appear that the structure the General Assembly is moving towards at the state regulatory level is to create something approaching the three-tiered system that alcohol is, of manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers. If that is where they end up should the voters approve legal cannabis, certainly they could create an entire duplicated board of cannabis license commissioners, but they might look around the state and say, we have 25 functional boards at the local level. Maybe it makes sense for efficiency's sake to do that. So we're certainly monitoring, and I guess we're all sort of waiting with bated breath to see what the voters do on that front. But we are prepared should that be where we end up.
And just one request, Mr. Chair. Do y'all have a copy of your B7s, the transfer of B7s to A7s?
Yes, we can provide that to the committee.
Can I ask for that, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, can you please provide the committee with a list of that? And regarding the cannabis thing, a gentleman named Tom Akris running it. I'd be happy to make an introduction if you guys need. Councilman Schleifer.
Well, first, I just got to welcome Councilman Reisinger back. Had I known he was here, I would have came a little earlier. But for some reason, I guess, when you leave the council, you start looking younger and younger. So you're looking good, Councilman. What's that? Do I need a vote? I don't even know what we're voting on. But no, just thank you guys for everything that you guys do. We have a lot of back and forth over stuff over the years, and we get a little heated sometimes. But we're all family, and appreciate you guys. And Nick's been a great addition to the team. I think I've I don't know if you get overtime hours for the times that
Comp time, maps employee.
Okay, good. Yeah,
I
keep the guy on the phone sometimes till the early morning. So I'm glad you're getting that time in. So thank you guys, and give a shout out to your bodyguard in the back over there who's looking at his phone. He's not even paying attention. Yeah, you. Yeah. All right, but just thank you guys for everything that you guys are doing. I know there's a whole bunch of stuff in every district, and I appreciate when you guys come out to my district and deal with our issues. So thank you.
You're welcome, Councilman.
Did you need the chief inspector, Mr. Chairman?
Colleagues, any other questions? Gentlemen want to take, and lady. Want to take a moment to thank your agency, especially John Chrysomalis, Chief Inspector. The work that he's doing with the Social Club Action Task Force is really incredible. They've made a really positive impact in terms of quality of life in neighborhoods throughout the 11th District, which I represent, and throughout the city. And I'm deeply appreciative of that, whether it's being somewhere in front of an establishment at 1 or 2 in the morning with John and getting a full briefing on what's going on, and just knowing that he's on top of it and he's coordinating that effort with fire marshal, with BPD, with health department, with code enforcement, so on and so forth. So want to thank him. Doug, you and Nick have just been fantastic to work with. You guys are really a model agency in city government, one of the 3 top performing agencies in the city. And I think you guys have come a really long way since I first got into public service. And Doug, a lot of that is due to your leadership and bringing on good people, promoting good people like John, bringing on good people like Nick. And former Councilman Commissioner Reisinger, great to see you. And please pass our thanks along to Chairman Matriani and Commissioner Greenfield. Really appreciate everything you guys do. With that, we are in recess. We are back in session at 10 a.m. sharp for Parking Authority of Baltimore City. Thank you.
Thank you.